Well, it's kind of a few thank yous, isn't it? I want to say thank you to the 5 folk for sharing their stories. I've met Jodie before, giving her prizes all the time, of course, but I've not met the others, and as we've just heard, the similarity of the stories between them is fantastic. I do want to comment on the challenge we've got with our engineering institution structure, because it's lovely that everyone here seems comfortable in the institution that they've chosen. But I imagine they've had some angst as to whether they should have chosen that one or how they found that one. And we've started this thing called 21st Century PEI, how many of you involved in 21st Century PEI? Okay, so I'm glad the structurals are, because it's a structurals issue. And I just encourage you to look at that. That's a digital opportunity to try and do what we're doing here in the physical space. And it really does need active participation by people to make that worthwhile. Like this evening, you'll remember these stories. You'll remember the failures that Angelique's telling us. You'll remember specific things. You'll remember the fact that Jacques wrote the presentation at lunchtime. So those things come out, which is difficult for a digital one to really come alive in that same way. But it's digital obviously reaches a lot more people than can get to Birdcage Walk. This is the era of the engineer, as the MP told us, the envoy of government envoy. It's a tremendous opportunity. A lot of engineers do indeed look like me. They are old and male and pale, and we're not going to last much longer. And I reassure you, actually, I'm not going to last much longer tonight. You can have a drink. But one of the key points I wrote down there is the older generations are prejudiced. And I think that's exactly right. I think when you look at why don't we have more diversity? Why don't we have broader thinking? It's because the era that I grew up in, I'm a baby boomer. I was born in the 50s. I grew up at the time we still had a Cold War. We had a situation where it was kind of men went out to work and women stayed at home. And so those are the experiences that we've had. And I've got to make a Brexit comment that when you talk about asking people to vote, young people vote quite different to old people. And that's, I think, the challenge we've got with engineering, which is that we've got to let the young people have a lot more say. They're a lot more sensible than the old people. The other bit that was in there, there's the first 2 speakers, Jodie and Georgia, both chose to go into engineering at what we would call an old age, a late age. I think Jodie said 13, Georgia 16. And there's an assumption that from the age of 3, you like to take things apart on the kitchen table or whatever it was. And there are a group of them, and here in the IMechE we call them STEM devotees. There are people who at the age of 3 knew exactly what they wanted to do. But there are a lot of people who go through and don't know what they want to do. And I think we've got to keep the doors open to encourage those people. And that's something maybe the institutions can do, that rather than just running into primary schools, actually running into further education and seeing what people are doing at 16, 17, 18 years old. And I think that helps the gender balance as well. There's a tendencies in the research that we've done to show that women make their career choices later in life than the men do. 2 more points. One is that somebody said it, and Georgia said it, is that the reason to do engineering is you can earn a lot of money. And that's absolutely true, that the average career earnings of an engineer in the UK are about £3 million. And so as earnings, £3 million of earnings is not a bad idea. If you want to get rich, become an engineer. If you want to get really rich, marry an engineer. But let's move on to doing the job that didn't exist 5 years ago. How many of you are in the job that you will retire in? And the answer, of course, yes, sorry, and me, yes. And the answer is broadly none of you in that. So how on earth are you going to find the next job? How on earth are you going to decide which job it is that you want to do? There's a tremendous number of articles. I just got one here from The Guardian from a year or 2 ago. 60% of all vacancies are not advertised. 60% of all job vacancies are not advertised. They are all going from people who know people, who network. And it's obviously a comment I'm making about the value of the institutions and other bodies as well, is that you are not going to get on as quickly and as well if you just talk to your mum and dad and talk to your employer. You've got to talk to organisations. You've got to look at websites. I mean, God knows what Jodie's internet bill is worth. I mean, she's searched everywhere, hasn't she? There are a number of bloody awards and grants and all that. That's all off the internet, isn't it, Jodie? That's not off your mum and dad, is it?
Certainly not off my mum and dad.
No, there you go. So, So the value of institutions, the value of networking. If I might end on a slight curse at the moment, the curse of GDPR, which is that all of our organizations are set up to enable people to talk to each other and to work with each other. And then GDPR says, oh, I'm sorry, you haven't asked Jodie whether you can ask her whether her mother knows about this award or not. And I think, sorry, I can't say a rude word, that actually the whole point of you being here and being in an institution is you want to know about those opportunities. And so for the government to say, I'm sorry, I mustn't write to Jodie without her permission, I think is absolutely bizarre. And I look forward to the Information Commissioner's Office trying to sue one of us institutions for actually talking to our members about engineering. So a big thank you to Nick and Daniel for coming up with the idea in Manchester all those years ago. And to thank you to Jodie, Georgia, Sam, Angeliki and Jacques for sharing their stories this evening. Thank you very much to all of you, and there's some stuff downstairs.